Hello my friends and fellow VEDSies. As a lot of you know, I love Drawfee. They're a wonderfully funny, talented, and sweet group of artists, and their videos have been a great source of comfort to me over the past 5-ish years. So I thought it would be fun to go through the archives and find the 15 best videos to introduce people to Drawfee with. Now obviously this isn't going to be a universal list, you know your friends better than I do. However, my goal was to use a process of elimination to find videos that would work well for most people. Because if you know your friend likes Adam Conover or Jujutsu Kaisen, you know those videos are there. But a hypothetical, generic friend you're trying to introduce to Drawfee is a little trickier. This is for that generic hypothetical person and obviously can be adjusted. So I created a set of parameters to try and determine what this ideal Drawfee video would be like. First, I wanted it to be close to or under the 45-minute mark. Any longer than that feels bold when you're recommending something to someone for the first time, and enough of the videos exist within that time frame that it feels like a realistic expectation to set. Secondly, the video has to include all 4 of the current hosts, Nathan, Jacob, Julia, and Karina, with no guests. In my mind, this is a first impression, and for it to be a good first impression, we need all 4 of the main people to be there, and we also don't want anyone else there coloring the first impression. This way our first-time viewer gets to make an informed decision about whether they want to continue. I did, however, decide that only 2 of the 4 artists have to draw in the video. However, I believe each of the ones I chose ended up having 3 or more. Next is the third factor, where we admittedly get into more subjective territory. In order to be a good introduction, it needs to be understood. So I cut episodes I believed hinged on understanding of pop culture that was not within general knowledge. Episodes stayed on the list if they focused on really well-known media like Pokemon or Disney, or if they only contained obscure references for a portion of the video. Again, staying in the more subjective territory, our 4th standard was don't be too weird. Like, it's Drawfee. It is weird, but there are degrees. You don't want to throw someone off the deep end, so I tried to stay in the sane, comprehensible SFW side of Drawfee. Sorry to all the spam email and shapes challenges that eliminates. The last 2 aren't strict criteria, but I did use them in toss-ups. Episodes got prioritized if the drawing or humor was particularly good, because this is a drawing comedy channel after all. All that out of the way, I will just say that this is a very loose order and we can get started. Okay, admittedly this is the weirdest one on the list, however I think it's a good litmus test, as well as an encapsulation of what Drawfee is. Here are 2 weird things that do not go together and we are going to make them go together. Plus some impressive art. If someone is open to this, there is a good chance that they are going to be interested in Drawfee. To reference something Nathan has said multiple times, this is the equivalent of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Italian restaurant episode. If you are intrigued by this level of shenanigans, you are going to do fine. Also, I've never seen Love Actually or played Dark Souls, and I was able to follow along, so I don't think anyone should struggle too much with this one. And it's worth it, if only to see what character Julia chooses. A lot of the celebrity sketch artist challenges made the 100+ episode list that I had to narrow down. They're all really fun and super accessible. However, the cartoon celebrity challenge is especially chaotic. Figuring out who each of them is and then remembering what Karina said about them and then realizing that she is entirely correct is such a journey. The concept of this episode is very simple to follow, which makes it a really good introduction, especially because everyone is really on brand with their artistic choices. Nathan's doing dinosaur lies, Jacob is doing cool characters and cool poses, Karina creates beauty out of what should be a shitpost, and Julia is apologizing for a masterpiece. Between the great art, the great snapshots of everybody's personalities and styles, and the recognizable movie choices, there's a lot going for this one. I really like this one. Of all the turning real world thing into character episodes, this is probably the best balanced of them all. Also, I'm a sexy man with a party plan has lived in my head rent-free ever since this episode came out. God, this one is so goofy. A lot of the randomly generated ones are goofy because of the generators, but this one is especially silly. Especially because Julia really nailed the selection process. Also, Almost Thunder Baseball is real, and that is delightful to me. This is a concept a lot of people have done over the years, which makes it an interesting starting point. The idea is good and approachable, but you have to stick out compared to all of the other people who've done it. Luckily, the Drawfee crew are incredibly competent and also make some interesting choices, so this one can stick out. God, this one is truly deeply goofy in the most Drawfee way possible. See, part of what I love about them is how willing they are to commit to silly bits, and this is an episode where they very much do that. Also, remember that you're feeling stupid is genuinely great advice, especially for my ADHD ass. A lot of Drawfee videos are really comedic or really chaotic, but there are some where you remember, oh shit, right, these people are really good at this. This is very much one of those episodes where they do impressive big brain stuff. Admittedly, my brother went through a Garfield phase, so I will acknowledge this might not be as universal as I think it is. However, this episode more than makes up with it, with some A+ banter as well as a classic Julia taking something normal and turning it into existential horror moment. The best episodes of Drawfee are typically the ones where everyone goes ham, and oftentimes those are the sincere fan art episodes. Weirdly, the Cursed Couples episode is a great example of that. Great art, great banter, and some AUs that no one had ever made before for a lot of beloved characters. And like I said, everyone went ham, so you truly get to appreciate how talented these people are with their beautifully crafted bullshit. This is one of my favorite episodes. The premise is simple, but the execution, 10 out of 10. And they chose a really fun mix of recognizable characters, so you'll be surprised by it, but also familiar with most of the source material. Drawfee is my comfort channel, so know that if I say one of their videos is a comfort video, I have probably watched it upwards of 100 times. This is a comfort video. I think a big reason for that is while there are a lot of speed draws with really impressive art, usually there isn't as much of a narrative. And as weird as it sounds, hearing these headcanons and pitches for lore of these characters who we all see but rarely think about is actually a very engaging video. Perhaps one of the most iconic episodes of Drawfee, it's also a really great starting point. Tarot is something that a lot of people are vaguely aware of, and this requires only the most surface level knowledge. Everyone is very much being themselves, which makes for a really good first impression. And one of the funniest moments in Drawfee history happens in this episode, so it had to make the list. This episode made me cry, which sounds bizarre because it's a good concept, but it doesn't sound like it should be anything that special. However, the gang went above and beyond on this one, and it made me audibly sob with laughter. Listen, I couldn't make a video recommending Drawfee videos without including at least one Pokemon episode. They're too iconic. So then it was just a matter of figuring out which one. I needed to include Karina, which eliminated a fair bit of the old one. I needed to include Julia because that's kind of the whole point. For a while I was considering the German names of Pokemon video, but that's just not quite chaotic enough. And between Young Goose and Monferno, this one definitely qualifies. So there we have it, 15 episodes to introduce someone to Drawfee. If you're a Drawfee fan, I'm curious what your first Drawfee video was and if you would recommend it to other people. I would not recommend my first to many people. It was a little odd. And if you haven't seen any Drawfee videos, do any of these intrigue you? My friends and fellow VEDSies, I will see you tomorrow.